Hey everybody, Brad Greenfield back here again for some more Excel 2013, and in this video we're going to work on adding some columns, adding rows, deleting those columns, and also hiding and unhiding. Now when we think about adding in rows and columns, there's a couple different things that we need to, or that we could do, and there are a couple things we need to understand about each of those. So we'll just jump right in here and start off by adding a column. If I wanted to add, and what I've got here just for our example is I've got three different data sets, and these are just made up numbers, 4-H project meeting numbers, some camp numbers here, and then some field day numbers. And again, I just threw these together just to give us an example of what we're working with. So if I wanted to add a column, and I click to highlight this column H, if I do a right click and insert, it's going to add a column to the left side of it. Okay, so it adds a column before, and it renames it or reorders the letters to the top to represent that new column that I added. Now that's not what I'm wanting to do, so I'm going to do a undo so I can get rid of that. And the same thing happens when I add a row. So if I click on row number 13, I do a right click and insert, it's going to add an empty row just above where column 13 was and move everything down. Now that works if we had one data set on the sheet or on the worksheet, but the problem with what we just did is I was trying to add, let's say, let me just undo this, and let's say I want to add a row, or I've got another camp location that's come online, and I need to insert that camp location into this data set, but I don't want to change the field days data set. So if I do a right click here and insert a row, it also inserts a row here in this data set. In fact, it inserts a row all the way across. Same thing with a column. If I right click and insert column, it inserts a column all the way down the sheet. So let me just undo a couple times to get back here. So what I want to do is insert a row or insert some cells above this Clyde York so that I can add another camp location. And first let me make sure my formulas are still holding true. So my formulas here are just adding these numbers up here at the bottom, so you can see that my formula is summing B12 through B14. So what I'll do is I will highlight this Clyde York here, and I will do a right click and insert. And because I only have these cells highlighted, it's asking me what do I want to do. I've got some options here. Shift cells to the right, shift cells down. That's selected by default because Excel has an idea of what we're trying to do here. I can also move entire row or entire column, but Excel's smart enough, it knows what I want to do, and that's exactly right. I want to shift all those cells down so I get a blank row or a blank set of cells that I can insert some data into. So I'll click OK, and I will type in test, and we're just going to name it test camp. And you'll see here as I type in the numbers, it will start to add. So now if I put 100 in this cell, we'll see that 13,977 actually go to 14,077. So let me just add 100 there. So we see how that automatically recognizes that we've added some more information to this total. So there's nothing else that we have to do. And I can go ahead and just complete this all the way across the board. And it's not going to change anything in any of the other data sets because I didn't insert a full row, and we didn't do anything that would mess with this first data set up here. So it recognizes that I just wanted to insert some items into this data set and have it calculate for me. So that's an easy way to do that. Now let's say, for example, I inserted that and then come to find out, we don't really need that information anymore. So I could do the same thing that I did before. I'll just highlight the cells that I want to get rid of. So with those cells highlighted, I'll do a right click and delete, and then I'll get some options again. Shift cells to the left. Shift cells up is selected by default because, again, Excel knows what I'm trying to do. I can shift the entire row or delete the entire row or the entire column. That's not what I want to do. I want to shift the cells up. I want to get rid of that test entry and shift the cells up. When I do that, the numbers, the calculation, the formula that I entered goes back to the way it was before, and we have no instance of that those test cells being inside of here. And this field day data never changed a bit. Now we can do the same thing with columns. So up here in my project meeting group, I showed you before, if I was to select column F and do a right click and insert, it's going to insert a new column, and it's going to also insert a new column all the way down the page. So that's going to mess up my camp numbers data set. So that's not what I want. I'm going to click undo, and I am going to highlight. Let's just I'll highlight the June, and I'll right click and do insert. And again, shift cells to the right is selected by default because that's exactly what I want to do. It's going to take row G, which has the heading of June, and move it to the left hand, or to the right hand side, and put a brand new empty set of cells in there that matches the number of cells that I have highlighted. So I'm going to get a new set of empty cells that have 4 cells for me to enter data into, and it's not going to affect the table or the data set below it. So I will click OK, and I'll just put in, again, just put in my test information, and we can see here as we enter numbers, it's going to do the same thing that it did down here. I've already got formulas selected here. It goes from B3 all the way to B13, and it's going to include this test set of numbers. So if I do 100 here, we'll see this go to 1107. Same here. 100, and we'll see this go to 1227, and 100 again, and same thing, it'll go to 1227 for us. So if I wanted to get rid of that, same way I did down here in the rows, I will select that data, those cells, do a right click and select delete. Shift cells to the left is exactly what I want it to do. I will click OK, and it goes back to the way it was before. So very quick and easy way that we can add information to data sets without disrupting other data sets we may have on the table. Okay, so there may be a situation also that arises that you want to hide some data. And when I say hide it, we maybe think that we're going to hide it out of view of if we were to email this data or this Excel spreadsheet to somebody, we hide it that way, and that's not really the case. They would still be able to unhide that data or unhide those rows or columns if they wanted to. So it's really just a way to, let's say you have a lot of data that's spanning across the page or down the page, and you don't need to see all of it right now for what you're trying to work on. So for whatever reason, you just want to hide some of that. So there is no way that I can select specific cells like we did when we were inserting cells and hide it. So when I hide, I'm hiding a complete column or a complete row. Okay, so we'll just go through that, and let's say that I want to hide column H. If I click to highlight column H and do a right click and then hide, column H goes away, and we can see right here the lettering goes from G to I, so it completely skips H. And also notice the behavior of my cursor. When I mouse over the boundaries of columns, I get a solid middle bar with a double facing arrow. Now when I move my mouse in between where the columns are hidden, that solid double bar, or that solid bar, becomes a double bar with a double facing arrow. So that lets me know that I've got a hidden cell there. If I didn't notice, probably going to notice the difference in lettering there first of all, but as I mouse over, I see that become a double bar, and if I double click, it unhides that. Now it will only unhide it and display the column wide enough to fit the exact width of the largest item in this column. So if I had some items down here that were longer, it would have made that a little bit longer. So let's say that I want to hide 2 columns. So if I do a control click, so if I control click here, then I've got 2 columns selected. Now if I right click and hide, it's going to hide both of those columns. You can see it goes from D to F, so column E is hidden, and then from G to I, so column H is hidden. Now when I double click on those, it's going to unhide both of them for me. So that's a really quick and easy way to hide a bunch of them, and then when you're done working or doing whatever you needed them hidden for, to unhide those, just to double click. And the same thing works for rows. So if I wanted to hide this row, I could just click that, and as I mouse over, you can see the same thing. It becomes a double facing bar. And if I double click, now let's say for example, and again it's the same thing here, if I do a control click here and I've got 2 rows selected, I do a right click and hide, it's going to hide both of those, and then when I double click on one of them, it's going to unhide both of them. Now that's for control click. If let's say that I hid column C and then hid column F, if I double click between E and G to unhide F, it's only going to unhide F. It did not unhide C because I didn't do a control click. Same thing here with the rows. If I hide column 12 and then hide column 14 and then double click on column 12 to unhide it, it does not unhide column 14. But if I control click, if I have column or row 14 hidden and I do a control click to select row 12 and then do a hide, when I double click on one of them, both of them become unhidden. Okay, so that's a quick and easy way that we can add cells to a working data set without disrupting the cells around us. It's also a way that we can hide and unhide cells very quickly. So that'll do it for this video. Look for more Excel 2013 training or videos coming soon.